of its dust, and that mighty forest fire of desire may be quenched. Chant unceasingly the name of the Lord and his glory. O Lord, mine is no prayer for pleasure, wealth, or fame. I want only steadfast devotion to thee, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. Do with me whatever thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou stumbled here on this path o'ergrown, strewn with thorns and thistles. Won't you cut these shrubs so sharp that hide your face from mine? like golden rays on an icy mountain top. Mother, lift me, free me, take me, and anchor me on your shore. Please, Ma, hold my hand, pick me up when I am falling from your love. Mother, lift me, free me, take me, and anchor me on your shore. All right, let's do a prayer. This is a prayer. May all the intensity of my love go to thee, O Lord, go to thee. May all those whispers of my silent aspirations reach your ears, sweet Lord, reach your ears. Wherever my thoughts may stray, may they respond at once to your call, and may all the sorrows on the way vanish at thy pull, sweet Lord, vanish at thy call. This begging bowl of my life, it's filled with alms from the world. May that be completely emptied, and may my heart be filled with gifts from thee, O Lord, with secret gifts from thee. May all the intensity of my love go to thee, O Lord, go to thee. May all the whispers of this silent aspiration reach your ears, O Lord, reach your ears. May all the intensity of my love go to thee, sweet Lord, we turn more light on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was like, all right. Okay, well, here we are, by grace once again. Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Thakur. On Krishna's special day, to study the lives of a saint, Brother Lawrence, who continually was aware of and lived in accordance, in response to and in accordance with the presence of the beloved of God, having taken a vow to never do anything in the moment that wasn't pleasing to the divine, and if there was something that he wasn't doing that he should be doing, to instantly begin doing it without question. And if he made a mistake, to not be bothered by it, but to apologize, put himself back in the presence of the Lord and carry on. Just like that, living in the moment, living sweetly in the presence of the beloved. And just by having him in mind, having her in mind, to be able to see the world properly, to see the world without a hunger for the world, to see the world without a discontent and a delusive need for something external, for something outside of this beautiful temple that we carry within, where God is properly worshipped. So we stopped last week just after the third paragraph of the fourth letter. The paragraph was so beautiful, actually, that I would love to read it again. It's similar to the one that we finished with the week before that. But he says that I am now so accustomed to that divine presence that I receive from it a continual succors upon all occasion. For about 30 years, my soul has been filled with joys so continual and sometimes so great that I am forced to use means to moderate them, to hinder their appearing outwardly. So this long work that he's been a part of, we know that he managed to establish himself first in the constant present, after 15 years of practice, and now he's 30 years into it, and is experiencing such a bliss of being that he has to cover it up, which is a problem I long for. If you have to have a problem, this is a good one to have. So he carries on this week by saying, and he's talking in third person now. I read that previous paragraph in first person, but it's actually written in third person because he's writing to somebody and doesn't want to betray his accomplishments. So I'll return to the third person, but know that the he he's talking about is his own self, Brother Lawrence. If sometimes he is a little too much absent from that divine presence, God presently makes himself to be felt in his soul to recall him, which often happens when he is most engaged in his outward business. This is a beautiful piece of hope and really a correction to a perspective on religion or on God that we often have, that we're in a one-way conversation with God. You know, we're always talking to God. Why doesn't she talk to me? You know, I have all these problems and all these questions. Why don't I get an answer? And not that I have an answer for that from this text, but we see here a person has devoted themselves to think of God at every moment, has devoted themselves to not make any move that was contrary to the love of God, has taken a vow to renounce everything in the world but the love of God, and to never have another motive for anything. And so this relationship, now 30 years in, is deep and well established. And there's an inner silence that has occurred in Brother Lawrence, so that inner stirring of that divine nature is felt and heard. You know, most of us in our day-to-day life, and he also is confessing to it here, we get pulled out of that center. We get pulled, what does that mean? We get pulled into mind. We get pulled into the whirl of our thinking. And we start analyzing and running up, well, what about this and what about that? No, I've got to do this. No, I forgot to do that. And the worries and the stresses that mind creates, that exist only as thought in the mind, is a noise loud enough and a disturbance big enough to pull us out of the awareness of our inner self, to prevent us from being authentic. We start living according to thought rather than according to our nature, which is love, bliss, and wisdom or knowledge. So he's saying here that when he sometimes gets a little too much absent, he's getting sidetracked by his work in the kitchen, he says God presently makes him to feel in his soul a call. Hey, come back here. And he goes on to talk about how it happens. He says, which often happens when he is most engaged in his outward business. He answers with exact fidelity to these inward drawings, either by an elevation of his heart toward God, or by a meek and fond regard to him, or by such words as love forms upon these occasions, as for instance, my God, here I am, all devoted to you, Lord. Make me according to your heart. So he hears this call of the beloved. And this call is going to be, I would imagine, very subtle. It's more of the recognition of an absence. When you get drawn into mind, when you get drawn into the world of the senses, which is the same thing, you leave behind the stillness, that peace that passes understanding that's established in the heart, in the shrine, where the divine dwells in each one of us, where God can be found in each one of us. We get pulled out of that silence, and we get pulled out of that stillness and that space. And it's very difficult to find your way back to silence, to find your way back to that, what the Buddhists would call the void, or that emptiness, but which is a profound emptiness. I was reading this morning in The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, where he was instructing us to be as aware of the silence between words as we are of the words, and to be as aware of the space between objects as we are of the objects. And he said the reason for that is that space and that silence is not, in fact, nothing. That it is, now we're going to have to play with some words here, because this is illegal in Advaita, but we're going to try and put a handle on Advaita here for a second. He says that space and that silence are the nearest things to the manifestation of the unmanifest. Remember, we talked a little bit on Sunday a week ago or two about the fact that the universe that we live in, we've reduced to a mind-sized universe. We are only aware of a universe that can be absorbed by 5 senses. That part of the universe that can't fit into one of our 5 categories, through the passages of one of our 5 senses, we're unaware of. We have no knowledge of. We have no instrumentation to know of its existence. And so he's saying that this inner silence, well, not just inner silence, actually he brings it to that, but that silence itself is what allows for words or music or expression. That the emptiness of space itself is what allows for manifestation, allows for objects to give rise. If there was no space, there would be no objects. If there was no silence, there could be no words. And so he's saying by becoming aware of that, it will help us to realize and come to the understanding that we are walking in God, that we are present in God, like fish are present in water. We are present in the divine. We exist in the divine. One of Eckhart Tolle's first realizations on that night when he had his enlightenment experience, he said the next morning when the sun was shining in the windows and his room was filled with that daylight, that he saw for the first time in his life that light and love are the same thing. Not that light is a good symbol of love, or that light reminds him of love. He said his realization was that light and love are the same. And so in that, this room, the emptiness of this room is filled with light. The night sky, even in its darkness, is pregnant with the light of 1,000,000,000,000,000 stars shining. Suns, not stars, suns shining. So the darkness of night is not dark at all. We only perceive it that way because there's nothing blocking the light to reflect it. It's simply passing freely through the unmanifest divine. And you can play with this idea a little bit. Think about when you dream. When you dream a dream at night, say you're standing here and you're looking out over this vast ocean at a mountain that's 125 miles away. In your dream, you've got 125 miles of empty space. But what is it that you're actually looking through? You're looking through your own mind stuff, right? And that 150 miles, where does it exist? It exists between your two ears. It's illusory. So all that you're walking through in a dream, all that you're touching in a dream, everything that you're seeing in your dream is your own mind stuff, taking all of these forms in response to your presence, to your being there, assuming that you're being there. So this idea of being forgetful and being called away from silence, being pulled out of that peace inside, he gets a call from God to come back. That sense when you've walked away, when you remember eating your favorite food, right? One of mine is, the way I really experience this, what I'm talking about, is at Christmas time when they have eggnog, that one time a year that you can buy eggnog in the stores, that milky, delicious. It's one of my favorite flavors ever. It's the only thing that makes me realize that my tongue is too short. Because I can only taste it from here to there and then it's gone. And it's one of those things, it's one of the clearest lessons to me on the fact that the senses cannot enjoy God as the soul can enjoy God. Because, your fingers are such a limited surface for an entire universe to be sensed. Your nose, 2 little tiny holes to smell a rose. What is that? You smell a rose, you want to be completely absorbed in roseness, I remember when I was 13, I was standing out on a big hill and there was this beautiful breeze blowing across the alfalfa fields. And when those waves start happening in tall grass, they were going, and at the same time the sky was that dark purple before a big storm. And so you had the white seeds of the grass fluttering and waving as it goes along. And I remember seeing that and feeling distinctly how small my eyes were, how fragile my eyes were, and how I depend on these fragile, tiny little things to perceive something so amazingly beautiful. And the fact that I stood there knowing I could not appreciate it to the extent that I knew it existed, that I could not know what it was for that breeze to touch all of those blades of grass and to wave all of those seeds and to feel the tumult of the clouds and the coming of the storm, that there was no way that I could fit all of that through these tiny eyes, through these tiny senses, and I felt such a deep frustration. So this is a hint of what it is to live in the presence of God, when that silence is pregnant with love, with presence, with meaning, with depth. And when your senses pull you out of it, when your distraction pulls you out of it, that voice of God is that voice of the silence, that voice of the contentment, that voice of pure fulfillment, that voice of absolute gentleness. It is that the sound of silence, as it were. And when he heard that call, that subtle reminder in there, the heart immediately was lifted. He said that it would lift either through an elevation of his heart toward God, where he just opened his heart to God, became mindful of the presence of the beloved again in that moment, or by a meek and fond regard to him, just by giving birth to a feeling of love toward God. A fond regard, nothing overwhelming. We're not talking about an ecstatic love here. We're just talking about the love between dear friends, friends who spend all of their time together, who have shared all of their sufferings together, who've walked through every step of life together. This is what he's experienced with the beloved. So a meek and fond regard to him, or by such words as love forms upon these occasions, just little thought of love. Oh, hey, sweetie. How's my beloved? Oh, yes, my beloved, you are here. These kinds of things, or my God, here I am all devoted to you. Lord, make me according to your heart, which is one of his things that he repeated. So he says, and then it seems to him, as in the effect he feels it, that this God of love, satisfied with such a few words, reposes again and rests in the fund and center of his soul. So this God that felt that separation when he reached out in that silence to call him back, when he gets what he was looking for, when he gets the attention of his devotee, of his beloved, when he gets that attention, then he returns to reposing in the center of the heart. That peace returns, that knowledge of no need, the divorce from hunger, the divorce from fear, the divorce from smallness happens, and that return to relationship, that return to oneness is established. The experience of these things gives him such an assurance that God is always in the fund or bottom of his soul, that it renders him incapable of doubting it upon any account whatever. Wow. That's beautiful. So there is nothing that he can conceivably do where he would feel like God would not be at the center of his soul, that God would not be present and always fully available and fully welcoming to him, that it's an unconditioned presence of God that doesn't require anything of you but to turn your attention toward it, to not be distracted from it, to not run after anything else instead of it, but to know that it is there as sure as you exist, that it is there as sure as you know love, that it is there as sure as you know beauty, and that it rendered him incapable of doubt. What a marvelous thing to arrive at. So just 30 years of practice, and he's arrived at a state where he's incapable of doubt toward the presence of God, and to where the heart is stirred to such a rapture of joy and returns so easily and so meekly to the thought of God in the moment. Judge by this what content and satisfaction he enjoys, while he continually finds in himself so great a treasure. He is no longer in an anxious search after it, but has it open before him and may take it whenever he pleases. To know, to have that security in God, that knowledge and experiential presence of the divine, to know what it is to have the mind quiet. For many of us, we've been practicing so many years and we still haven't even experienced a moment of silence in the mind. The mind is constantly doing, constantly saying, constantly chattering, constantly analyzing, constantly raising up this memory or this idea or this piece of knowledge or understanding this or explaining that. But to go before mind, which is to transcend mind means to set it down because it's unnecessary. You don't need the noise. You sit there, and it becomes the stage upon which God appears. It becomes the stage upon which God plays. And you are, in your awareness, sit in that place, undistracted, so that you are no longer looking for God. You've just decided to see God, to obey what Vivekananda said. Stop seeking Him. Stop seeking Him and see Him. And that's what it is to sit in here. So love is light and God is love. So here you are right now, completely surrounded by light, completely illumined by light. And it is God herself that is using that light to show you everything else, to make you aware of everything else. It is the light of God. So you close your eyes, and it's still light. It's still there. Open your eyes, it's still light. It's still there. And even in your own mind, light exists. God exists. Even though no light in this physical form has ever made it into your mind. Somehow in your dream at night, how do you have daylight in your dream? From a brain that has never seen light, has no idea what light is. How does God get in there? How does God become the very substance of your dream without your awareness, without you knowing? So any time you see how God is always available to him, it's not a special thing for Brother Lawrence. He's writing this and telling us this because this is the reality for us as well. Even though we haven't done the 30 years of work, and even though we don't experience the joy and the bliss of it because we're wandering in our mind, everywhere that we wander, God is equally present. Everywhere that we look, God is equally present. So in those thoughts that have taken you away from God, with proper seeing, those same thoughts are in God. So it's not necessarily a big change in what you're doing. It's an enormous change in how you're doing it. To do it with the awareness of being bathed in love. To do it with the notion and knowledge that this universe is a manifestation of pure love, despite the evening news. That this world is in fact an unfolding of a story of love. That all of the things in the news, even the heinous things, can be seen as being motivated by a love of something, by something. He complains much of our blindness and cries often that we are to be pitied who content ourselves with so little. God, saith he, has infinite treasures to bestow, and we take up with a little sensible devotion which passes in a moment. Blind as we are, we hinder God and stop the current of his graces. But when he finds a soul penetrated with a lively faith, he pours into it his graces and his favors plentifully. There they flow like a torrent, which, after being forcibly stopped against its ordinary course, when it has found a passage, spreads itself with impetuosity and abundance. Well, you can't use more words to talk about fullness than that little paragraph. A torrent, plentifully penetrated, lively faith. He pours into it graces and favors. That he finds God will take the smallest opening that you give her and fill it forcefully with a torrent of grace, a torrent of bliss. So much so that I guarantee you will look away out of fear. You'll look away out of a wanting to preserve your ego, because it will come in with such a force and such a clarity and such a purity that this ego will be in danger of being dissolved, will be in danger of disappearing. And because you're deeply attached to it, because you like your personality, you like your body, you like your mind, you're fascinated with all the things that it does, when that possible dissolution is real before you, when that dissolution can happen before you, this is a moment where we're faced with the reality of our condition. When we choose to grab ego, when we choose to take refuge in ourself and in what we think we know, for the sake of comfort or for the sake of familiarity, when we won't let go and be taken to our deepest and most beautiful essence, the experience of oneness with God. So this is why we practice, because one of the ideas that I have about death, I got it from these near-death experiences. Actually, I didn't get it directly. I got it from my brothers here that some of them have read many of them and have given me lots of information about them. But imagine that at the point of death, your body falls off. Imagine this. Imagine you're laying there in your deathbed, and finally the heart stops and the body is gone, and you realize that you're not. Just think of how that's going to be. What an interesting experience that's going to be when the body and everything familiar drops off and you still exist as a point of reference, as an I. And then you go and you see this light, this pure divinity. You see God, and it's shining bright as a torrent of grace, and it's shining right through you, which means everything in you is visible. Everything about you is instantly visible. Everything that you said, did, hoped for, longed for, thought about, lusted after, experienced and tried in this life is suddenly plain and open and seen by anyone looking. What will you do? What will you do? Will you have had enough practice to trust the grace that is that light, to keep walking directly at it, unashamed, unafraid, unhindered, to accept that grace, that pure love in such a beautiful form? Will you be able to keep walking? Or will the ego call you to protect it? Will you be ashamed? Will you be afraid? Will you be sad? Will you long to go back to it? Will you find a body? Because what you do at that moment determines what happens. Embrace the Lord fearlessly, not because you're great, not because you're awesome, though you are in your real sense, in your authentic sense, not for any reason of your accomplishment, but purely for the reason of the love of God. You go forward, and you open yourself to that without fear, not owning it, because all of this Vedanta is to teach you that you are not those things. You were never that mind that's now left behind. You were never that body that is now no more. You were always the ever-free, ever-pure, blissful self. In your practice, as you sit with the divine, practice this, familiarize yourself with this, surrender yourself to this. So when it's your moment to stand before God in that light, when it's your moment to walk directly into that light without fear and without shame, you can. Because apparently if you turn to the left or right, whatever you take refuge in is your new birth. Possibly. I'm not saying that as a fact. Whatever you take refuge in, whatever you long for, whatever you reach for comfort or relief from your embarrassment or your shame or your fear, whatever you reach for, that's your new lesson. You're going to have to find out how to let go of that so that you can be yourself, so that you can be ever free, that ever pure, blissful self. So he's talking that God has this infinite grace available, that if you make yourself just even slightly available to it, he will push it through you with a torrent of delight and wonder. Yes, he says, we often stop this torrent by the little value that we set upon it. But let us stop it no more. Let us enter into ourselves and break down the bank which hinders it. Let us make way for grace. Let us redeem the lost time, for perhaps we have but little left. Death follows us close. Let us be well prepared for it. For we die but once, and a miscarriage there is irretrievable. Of course, that's within that Christian context where you have just one life to get it right, and if you don't do it, well, that's a huge misfortune. You know. Fortunately, Thakur says that we get many chances, and that God's infinite mercy will bring us all home. But it's a matter of time. Thakur says that some people are going to get to enjoy the party starting at 8 a.m. Some of us are going to have to wait till noon, and some of us won't get till the party until 7 or 8 or 9 at night, when there might, So, but he guarantees you that after you get to the party, you'll be like, oh my God, why didn't I get here this morning? Why did I wait for tonight? So he's saying, when you sit for your practice, please be sincere. Please be authentic in it. Please be earnest in it. Take it very seriously as the most important thing that you're doing all day long. More important than the doctor's meeting, more important than the job interview, more important than the new car, is this moment that you're setting yourself in the presence of God. Not as a deposit that you'll draw on later, not to achieve something that you'll enjoy somewhere in the future on that day of enlightenment, wherever it might be. No. To sit in that enlightened moment, to sit in your meditation, so that the here and now becomes your favorite place, so that the here and now becomes your most secure place, so that here and now is the safest place for you. That's what we're working on, because you'll never get out of the here and now, ever. The here and now is. If you're not happy in this moment, it's not a matter of conditions that have to change. It's a matter of understanding. You don't pay attention to the divine love flowing at you from all of these chandeliers. You're not aware of the divine love that you're swimming through like a fish. The presence of God, which is everywhere around you. It's only becoming aware. It's only opening your eyes to, and to constantly remind yourself at every moment in the day for 30 years until you reach a place where you cannot forget, where doubt is impossible for you. And when you're living in that here and now, the here and now that happens when the body drops, of course we're breaking all kinds of rules talking about it like that, but in the here and now when the body drops, that here and now won't be any different for you than this here and now, sitting in this room tonight. You will have surrounded yourself with the presence of God by the knowledge that He is everywhere present and always perfect. And you will have learned to see the body as something other than self, and the mind and its noises as belonging to something else. You were ever only the witness of it. Your nature has always been equivalent to the divine, has always been of God. So this is the practice that we do so that we don't get lost, so that we don't get pulled away, so that at that moment when we can walk toward God, we don't shrink in fear. We don't shrink in shame because we think that we're lustful, we think that we're hungry, we think that we're this, that, or the other. We are not. We're ever free, ever pure. I say this again. Let us enter into ourselves. Do you know what that means? How does one enter into oneself? You can't turn around and go into yourself, right? Because it's you. You can't turn you around to see you. It's like your face. So what do? You shut out everything else, and you relax into that noiseless peace of the heart. Put your attention here. Know that the love of God flows out of a small spring the size of your thumb. It flows out unconditioned and into your mind and into your world, and it's your ego that puts a nozzle on it and says so much goes here and so much goes there, when you could, if you remove that nozzle, fill the entire world up with it. It's not a rare substance. It's for everyone equally, for everything equally. So in that silence, you sit there, you quiet the mind, you think of nothing. You just set it in a fond regard for love. And then you just sit there and let love become apparent to you. Let love become obvious to you. And then as you sit in that place of love and you look out through these windows on your face at the world around you, you are bathed in love. So when that angry person honks their horn, you're not moved. So when that boss comes in a panic, you're not afraid. So that when you realize that you missed a deadline, you're not overcome. You're bathed and established in this love, and everything that you do will be filled with it. You'll become the best employee, the best mom, the best friend, the best customer in line at the cashier. You'll become that which everyone longs for, not because there's something special about you, but because you finally have become authentic. You have finally become real. You finally become human. I say it again, let us enter into ourselves. So let us shut down all of this noise, all of the senses, all of this outgoing longing. The time presses. There is no room for delay. Our souls are at stake. So even in this moment, right now, this doesn't mean tomorrow's practice. Do this tomorrow. It means right now. Become aware of this love. Let this presence of God become your awareness now. And it becomes even more infinitely intimate than that, because the awareness that you're using to be aware of God's love is the love that you're becoming aware of. It is the thing itself. So you see that it keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and more bizarrely fuller and fuller, you know, as it moves into your center, and you start to realize at some point, perhaps, this one without a second, which is the intimacy that you have searched for in every relationship you've ever had, broken or unbroken, lost or not lost, but have never been able to get. You've never been able to get close enough to your lover because there's always a body between you. You know, you haven't been able to enter their mind because there's always a world of senses between you. And if you're built on a mountain of constantly changing conditions, that relationship itself is a constant torrent of experiences. How easily love becomes hate when it's not love for its own sake. How quickly the heart closes and defends itself fiercely when it loses trust. When it realizes it's not getting as much as it thinks it's giving. How perilous is a life of the ego, of the mind. This is why it's important to put it away and learn to be. I say again, let us enter into ourselves. The time presses. There is no room for delay. Our souls are at stake. I believe you have taken such effectual measures that you will not be surprised. I commend you for it. It is the one thing necessary. We must, nevertheless, always work at it, because not to advance in spiritual life is to go back. But those who have the gale of the Holy Spirit go forward even in sleep. If the vessel of our soul is still tossed with winds and storms, let us awake the Lord, who reposes in it, and he will quickly calm the sea. Do you guys know that story? There's a story in the Gospels in the New Testament where, you know, they were fishermen, or many of them were fishermen, and they were on a boat in the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus was sound asleep down in the hold, wherever that is, on a boat. And there's this huge storm going, and the fishermen are all up there trying to bring down the sails so that the boat doesn't capsize and to keep the water out and whatnot. They're panicking, and someone screams. John says to Peter, "Go, wake up the Lord. Go wake up Jesus. Get him up here. We need him. We need him." So he goes down, and no, there's several lessons there. One, in this huge giant storm where they're all thinking they're about to die, Jesus is asleep, completely unconcerned. Why? Because he knows that this conditioned world is not real. You know, that self, that it's a dream within the mind of the beloved. It is not real. That he's safe. So he's down there sleeping. Well, he comes up and they're all in a panic. Help us, look, this boat's going to sink. We're going to capsize. Do something. We got to do it. And he turns to them and he smiles and he just says, "Oh, you of little faith." And then he demonstrates it. He raises his hand and stills the water. All the storm stops, the wind stops, the waves stop. And he turns to them and says, have you such little faith that God will take care of you? You know, this notion of knowing. So that's the power of this presence of God, if you stay aware of it. It will become, it starts right now. When we think about it, it's probably, for every one of us different, but probably more than half of it is imagination, right? We think about God, it's like, okay, he's cool. I like it. That's nice. But as you become more sensitive inside, as the noise begins to recede and as the distractions begin to recede, you begin to see things that you had not been aware of within yourself that will change your experience of being, that will change your understanding of what it is to exist, and will change your notion of God, change you in that relationship. As you come closer and closer, as it were, or become less and less guarded against love absolute, love without condition. And you'll know that you're getting close when you're not afraid to love anymore. When you're not afraid to help somebody without wondering, oh, is it going to be worth it? What are they going to do with that? Or are they going to lash back at me? How are they going to respond? All these reasons that we stay closed and protected is because we think we're small. We think we're a body. We think we're a mind. We think we have emotions. All these things that can get hurt and that are tender and fragile. We have forgotten that we're a soul, that the Gita says cannot be burned, cannot be wetted, cannot be cut, cannot be injured. That you are the essence of all things. What can hurt you? There's that marvelous story about the king. There's a king walking with his soldiers, and I don't remember why they have to disturb him, but they pass this sadhu, and I guess they want the sadhu to carry something or help out with something or something. But they go up and they're trying to say something to the sadhu, and he's just sitting there in deep meditation and stillness. And the king finally goes up to him, and hits him in the arm with his sword and says, "Do you not know who I am? I'm the king. Do you not know that I could run this sword through you right now without blinking my eye?" And the sadhu responds, "Yes, I know who you are, but more importantly, I know who I am. And I could let you run that sword through this body without blinking an eye." A marvelous, marvelous scene. That is what it is to know God. That is what it is to know your true nature. That fearlessness, that utter lack of concern for the things of body-mind. You live for love, and love alone. I have taken the liberty to impart to you these good sentiments, that you may compare them with your own. It will serve again to kindle and inflame them, if by misfortune, which God forbid, for it would be indeed a great misfortune, they should be, though never so little, cooled. Let us both recall our first fervors. Let us profit by the example and the sentiments of this brother, who is so little known of the world, but known of God, and extremely caressed by him. I will pray for you. Do you pray instantly for me, who am in our Lord. So wow, look at that way he describes God. That he knows so little, that Brother Lawrence knows so little of the world. And he doesn't say, but knows God. He says, who knows so little of the world, but is known by God. So he sees there's no center of ego as of himself being the lover of God. It is God loving him. And that he says that God, and extremely caressed by him. Wouldn't it? That's just lovely. I mean, that's just beautiful. How could I ever describe my relationship with God like that as being, what is that? Extremely caressed by him. Just, you can imagine that God can cover your whole body with a hand at once and stroke it with an unending hand. That would be an extreme caress, a caress that it wasn't just hands width all the way down. It was like body length all the way with no stopping. As soon as that hand moves, there's another one just coming along. That this is the nature of God. That is how it's possible for every one of us to be his favorite, to be her favorite. Because there is not a quantity, it's an infinity. And God can love you so much that you know absolutely without the possibility of doubt that you are her favorite. That she loves you more than anyone else. That is the nature of God. That's the nature of that love. And so he's saying to this man, don't let this become cool within you. Don't let this fire die out. Remember this love. Remember this presence of God, and stay with it continually, and constantly remember your first day, your first fervor, when you first approached spiritual life, or you first had that insight. I remember when I first took my initiation in India back in the 90s, and I had this, I was reading the gospel at that time, and the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you read that, and there's people experiencing ecstasy all over the place. There's somebody seeing God here, somebody seeing Kali there, someone seeing Shiva, and then Thakur is constantly going off into samadhi, and people are touching him and looking at his eyes, and his face is glowing. And you read this all over the place, and so I was reading that, and I was thinking, oh, wow, this is cool. This is the way it is, right? And so I thought when I had my initiation, I was like, I sat down. I remember the first time I got home that afternoon, or got back to the hotel, actually, and I sat down to do my meditation, and how wonderful it was to believe naively that it could happen at any second. This could be the time. And I sat for hours back then, not because I was doing discipline and austerities, but because I truly, truly thought any moment this could happen. Any moment my delusion could fall away and I could see God. I remember sitting in this restaurant called the Chotiwala in Rishikesh, and I was sitting there with my friend Philip across the table from me. And I don't know what happened, and maybe nothing. You just get a little dizzy feeling for a second, or it was like that. There was nothing really that happened. I just got some deja vu for a second, or something, and I was like, Philip, I think it's happening. I'm not kidding. I was like, Philip, I think it's happening. And he's looking at me, he's like, what's happening? I said, I think enlightenment's going to happen. And it's so funny that I think about that now, and how absurdly naive that seems, and how ridiculous that was. I had no idea that I still had at least 25 years to go. We're still not there, we're still going. But remember that fervor, remember that faith, because it is true. No matter how many times or how many years time has passed between you and that belief, it is still true that at some moment you are going to realize God. You are going to know the truth. And it's not because of your effort. It's not because of your accomplishment. It's not because you finally meditated 1,322 and a half seconds, which was what was required. It's not like that. It will just be because God touches you. For the first time, you're aware of it. And that will be enough. So sit with that anticipation and approach God with that faith and with that knowledge. I am your own. This life is lived because of you, through me. I know that my ego is unreal. I know that my dreams and hopes are delusional. But they teach me something about you. They originate in your name. All of my desires are because I think that you lay out here somewhere. Ramakrishna says to get piqued with God. Where are you? For crying out loud. I'm sitting here. And I've been sitting here a long time. Where are you? You know, come to me. I want you. I want nothing else but you. Make that true. Want nothing else but the Lord. Understand that it is true. That it is the Lord you're looking for in partners, in sweets, in money, in fame, in talent. All of the things your ego is trying to hold on to. They're just all symbols, trinkets that remind your soul of its nature. But you've confused the symbol with the thing itself. And you keep running, keep trying to grab it. And you can't, because it's a reflection of what's already in you. So sit with the Lord. Pray constantly to the Lord, and pray constantly for each other, remembering that initial fervor. All right, that's the end of the fourth letter. Anybody have any, is there any questions in the online world, or here we have one in the room?
I've been suffering for 2 weeks, Swami.
Ah.
Looking forward to stumping you.
It's easy to do.
To my days of doing a little sculpture. And the last 2 weeks ago, Brother Lawrence was advising us to let the Lord chip away at us to refine our shape.
Oh yes, that's right.
So he's a deductive sculptor. How about an additive sculptor, like clay? Is that in another chapter?
Well, it's just a different practice. Just a different practice. I don't know, because what he's taking away is is unreality. He's taking away the dream. So it's not that he's actually removing anything.
Well, so maybe man is always adding to the dream.
Oh yes, most.
Additive sculpture.
Oh, most definitely. Yes, most definitely. You're always.
Very good.
We've packed on layers and layers and layers of unreality. You know, and that's what Swami Chidbrahmananda said. He says that there's nothing in the scriptures to tell you what God is. The scriptures are there to tell you what God is not, so that that which is obvious can become apparent. This presence of God.
Well, you said that when the person is seeking for fame, name, and other desirable pursuits, the person is seeking God.
Yes.
Can you clarify that?
Sure. It's a matter of discernment. That's what discrimination is about. The one that Thakur, he gets rather graphic about. I always hesitate, but you know, I remember walking down the street and seeing this very beautiful person on the other side of the street, and it aroused that desire in me. And I remember stopping and trying to practice what I had read in the gospel, of saying, okay, mind, what is it that you want? You know, is it a body part? Here, take a knife. You can go cut out any body part that you want. And you instantly recoil. You're like, ooh. And so I said, well, what is that, mind? Do you want the whole body? Is that what you want? You know? kill that person and go take their body. You can have their body. And immediately, like, ooh, that recoil happens again. Like, ooh, no. Well, and I was like, well, you've got the whole body, and you've got the parts of the body. That's all you're seeing, and you're arising with this flame of desire inside. What is it that you're looking for? And it becomes clear you're looking for the life that's in that person that presents the body. You know, you want the life, the living thing. You want the intimacy. You want one without a second. You know? So you can see that your lust for that person is not about a body part. It's not about the body as a whole. That it's about a connection with the Spirit of God which dwells in it. That you've associated with a body. That you've associated with preferences and aversions. Same thing with money. What are you looking for in money? You're looking for absolute security. You're looking for absolute power. You know, you're looking for absolute pleasure. Every one of those is a name of God that you've confused with money. Because money can give them to you for a very short time. And when the money is given to you, what comes with it is a deep responsibility towards all the people that gave the money to you, right? And then a fear, a deep fear that's as big as the money, the fear of losing it, of having it disappear or be taken away. And so everything that gives you bliss in the material world always comes with its opposite. You can't have one without the other. This divine experience within you is the only thing that cannot have an expiration, that does not change, because it itself is unchanging. It itself is outside of time. It's transcendent. It itself cannot be destroyed. It is one without a second. What is there that can destroy it? It's like coming to realize that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. It changes the whole nature of it. If you were running from some gang of thieves through the streets of New York in your dream, and suddenly it occurs to you, hey, whoa, wait, I'm dreaming. I'm actually asleep in the bed. What happens? You stop running. You turn around and you look at these guys, and you're like, what? You can't do anything to me. I'm not here, you're not here. We're in my own mind. You are me, I am you. And I can change the dream in a whim. You know, just like that. And we say, oh, that's a little bit far-fetched. But you know, one of the most far-fetched things you'll ever read is in the Bible when Jesus says to you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, and you go to the kitchen and find out how small that is, it's like a period, little tiny seed. It says, if you have that much faith, you can say to this mountain, that mountain out there with Hollywood written on it, you can say, hey, throw yourself into the sea. And Jesus says, verily I tell you the truth. Okay, that means I'm going to tell you something that's super duper true. I'm not making this stuff up. He says, I tell you the truth, that sea, that mountain will pick itself up and throw itself in the sea. So you see, this world has the same nature as a dream. If you can stop seeing it as real and forcing yourself to obey its rules through identity, you could say to the mountain, throw yourself in the sea. So, there you go. Be free. Don't let your past actions determine your current actions. Don't let your future hopes determine your current actions. Let what you are and what flows through you determine what manifests from you, without a will, without a hunger, without a need, but simply because of what you are. And exist in the world like that, deathless and ever free, knowing the dream to be a dream, a manifestation of beauty and wonder, of profundity and wisdom, of love with no depth, no end, no limit. And that's Brother Lawrence. Jai Ma. Jai Thakur. Jai Swamiji. All right, so 2 weeks, we'll be back here by the grace of Mother.